September 22nd, 1978. Seligman, 2:30 in the afternoon. The traffic stopped. Not slowed, stopped. Inside a small barber shop beside Route 66, Angel Delgadillo looked out the window and watched something disappear that his town had depended on for generations. Cars, thousands of them. For decades, Route 66 had carried America directly through Seligman.
Route 66 is over 90 years old and has definitely become a road less traveled.
Families heading west to California, truck drivers hauling freight across the desert, soldiers, vacationers, Dust Bowl migrants fleeing economic collapse during the Great Depression. 9,000 vehicles passed through town every single day.
This legendary ribbon of highway carried dust-covered migrants, Elvis-loving tourists, and Corvette-driving dreamers alike.
Then Interstate 40 opened a few miles south. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, the road was empty. Motels that had been full the night before sat vacant. Diners stopped serving lunch halfway through the day. Gas stations closed their pumps because there was nobody left to sell gas to. Seligman did not slowly decline. It was switched off. And it wasn't alone. Across the United States, dozens of Route 66 towns experienced the same thing. Not because factories collapsed, not because mines ran dry, not because of war or disaster, because a highway moved. For nearly 60 years, Route 66 had been one of the most important roads in America. Stretching more than 2,400 miles from Chicago to Santa Monica, it created entire economies in places that otherwise might never have existed.
Its design was clever. It zigzagged through small towns, instead of skirting around them, pumping money and opportunity directly into rural America.
Gas stations, motels, diners, tourist towns in the middle of the desert built entirely around the assumption that the cars would keep coming. Then the federal government built a faster map, and the old one became expendable. Today, many of those towns still exist physically. Their signs remain. Their roads still connect. Their neon still flickers at night. But the movement that kept them alive is gone. What remains is one of the clearest ghost maps in America, a road that still remembers places the country decided to move past. Tonight, we drive that map, from abandoned motels in the Mojave Desert, to ghost towns along the Texas border, to the barber in Arizona who refused to let his town disappear. Because this is not just a story about a highway, it is a story about what happens when speed becomes more valuable than the places in between. Every empty place has a reason. Every broken town has a story. This is the Ghost Map. Before Route 66 was nostalgia, it was survival. When it was commissioned in 1926, the United States still did not have a reliable way to cross itself by car. Roads changed names at county lines. Pavement ended without warning. Drivers carried spare tires, water cans, and paper maps because getting stranded in the desert could kill you.
Local roads, unmarked paths, and trails that change names every time you cross a state line. It's chaos. The federal government looks at this disaster and says, we need to fix this.
Route 66 changed that. 2,448 miles from Chicago to Santa Monica. 8 states, hundreds of towns. The first continuously paved route connecting the Midwest to the Pacific coast. And along every mile of it, something happened the highway planners did not fully anticipate. People stopped. They stopped because their radiators overheated in the Mojave Desert. They stopped because their children were hungry. They stopped because driving across Arizona at night in 1932 was not something most families were willing to risk. And wherever they stopped, someone built something. A gas station, a diner, a motor court, a trading post, a motel with a flickering neon sign promising vacancy. An entire economy emerged from the simple fact that Americans in cars needed places to eat, sleep, and refuel. The road built the towns, not the other way around. In the Texas Panhandle, in the deserts of New Mexico, across Arizona and the Mojave, tiny communities that would never have existed otherwise became lifelines between major cities. Then the Great Depression arrived, and Route 66 became something larger than commerce. John Steinbeck called it the Mother Road. Between 1935 and 1940, hundreds of thousands of Dust Bowl migrants drove west toward California. Families tied mattresses and cookware to the roofs of overloaded cars and followed Route 66 because it was the only paved path out of economic collapse. The towns along the road became checkpoints of survival. A mechanic in Tucumcari, a diner in Amarillo, a gas station outside Kingman. Without them, many travelers would never have made it across the desert. After World War II, the road transformed again. Now came the vacationing families, returning soldiers with steady paychecks. The first generation of Americans wealthy enough to drive simply because they wanted to. And Route 66 exploded. Motels filled every night. Diners served hundreds of meals a day. Roadside attractions competed for attention with giant arrows, neon cowboys, fiberglass dinosaurs, and signs promising free ice water in the middle of the desert. For towns along the route, traffic became destiny. Some communities received more visitors in a week than permanent residents in a year. Entire local economies depended almost completely on cars continuing to pass through. And because the road felt permanent, the towns built permanent lives around it. Schools, churches, homes, generations. They believed the traffic would always come. They had no idea the federal government was already designing a new map, a faster one. And on that new map, many of these towns would no longer matter. The interstate system was sold to Americans as progress. For Route 66, it became a death sentence. When President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act in 1956, the goal was speed. A national network capable of moving military equipment, commercial freight, and millions of drivers across the country as efficiently as possible. The interstate system was not designed for towns. It was designed to bypass them. That single design philosophy changed the geography of America. The new highways avoided downtown streets, stoplights, railroad crossings, and local businesses. Engineers routed them outside population centers whenever possible, creating long, uninterrupted corridors where cars could move at 70 miles an hour without stopping. For travelers, the system was faster. For Route 66 towns, it was catastrophic. The bypasses happened gradually at first, one section at a time. A new interstate here, a rerouted exit there. Towns along the old road began noticing fewer cars, emptier motels, quieter diners. Then, in some places, the collapse happened all at once. On September 22, 1978, Interstate 40 officially bypassed Seligman. 9,000 cars a day disappeared almost instantly. Motels that had been full the previous night sat empty by evening. Diners that served hundreds of lunches suddenly had nobody to feed. Gas stations stopped selling gas because there were no longer enough travelers to justify opening the pumps. Seligman did not slowly decline. it was switched off. Other towns never recovered at all. Glenrio sat directly on the Texas-New Mexico border. In the early 1960s, thousands of cars passed through daily. Route 66 businesses lined its single street. Then, Interstate 40 moved north, not through Glenrio, around it. By 1985, only 2 residents remained. Today, 1 person lives there. In Amboy, Roy's Motel and Cafe still stands in the desert, its neon sign one of the most photographed objects on old Route 66. Tourists leave the interstate to photograph it. Then they leave. Nobody stays. In Two Guns, an entire roadside zoo collapsed into rust and graffiti after the bypass. Mountain lions once paced behind chain-link fences there. Today, the cages remain, open to the desert sky. And then came another blow. The Highway Beautification Act of 1965 restricted roadside advertising along interstates. Even towns near the new highways could no longer legally place large signs telling drivers they existed. The traffic sped past at 75 miles an hour. The towns had no legal way to ask it to stop. That is the real ghost map hidden beneath Route 66. The towns themselves did not move. America simply moved around them. And once the interstate became the main road, these places were no longer destinations. They became exits. Then abandoned exits. Then names people stopped saying altogether. Drive Route 66 today and you will find something strange. Not just abandoned places, paused places. Places that feel like somebody left for lunch in 1974 and never came back. In Glenrio, the old State Line Motel sign still stands beside the road. On one side it reads, "First Motel in Texas." On the other, "Last Motel in Texas." The sign still makes the promise. There are no guests, no keys, no clerk waiting behind the counter. But the sign remains, standing beside a road that no longer needs the town attached to it. That is what makes the ruins of Route 66 different from most abandoned places. They are not ancient enough to feel historical, and they are not recent enough to feel urgent. They exist in a strange middle ground, close enough to living memory that the people who drove Route 66 in its golden age are still alive, still remembering, still occasionally taking the old exits to see what remains. In Amboy, Roy's Motel and Cafe still glows against the Mojave Desert. The neon sign is famous worldwide now, photographed by tourists from Europe, Japan, Australia. They come searching for an America they imagine once existed, and in a way, it did. But Amboy's official population is now 0. The tourists photograph the motel, then they leave. Nobody stays. In Essex, silence has become the dominant sound. A few residents remain. Technically, the town still has a post office. Freight trains occasionally pass through the desert nearby, carrying goods between cities that barely know Essex exists. Everything else feels suspended. The wind, the heat, the empty road. And in Two Guns, the ruins feel almost apocalyptic. A roadside zoo once stood there beside Canyon Diablo. Travelers stopped to see mountain lions pacing behind fences while eating hamburgers beneath Route 66 signs. The animals are gone. The cages remain. Rusted chain link sits open beneath the desert sky. Graffiti covers walls once designed to entertain passing families. The canyon itself remains unchanged, as if the landscape is quietly waiting for the last human structure to disappear so it can reclaim the place completely. But perhaps the strangest thing about Route 66 is this. The road itself still works. You can still drive most of it. The pavement is cracked in places, gravel in others, but the route remains physically there, passing directly through downtowns the interstate system deliberately avoided. Like a memory the country paved over but never fully erased. And every abandoned motel, diner, gas station, and curio shop along that road tells the same story. The towns were built around movement. Then movement moved somewhere else. The terrifying part is how quickly it happened. Not centuries, not generations. A few federal decisions, a few exit ramps, a few missing cars, and entire towns entered a kind of permanent pause. Still standing, still visible, but no longer on the way to anywhere. Which raises the question underneath every mile of Route 66. If the government could redraw the map once, what stops it from happening again? Not every Route 66 town died. Seligman survived. Barely. And it survived because one man refused to accept that his town had become irrelevant. His name was Ángel Delgadillo, a barber, the son of Mexican immigrants, born in Seligman in 1927.
This Ángel Delgadillo. I was born here in Seligman, and I'm just a barber.
He grew up watching Dust Bowl migrants drive west through town during the Great Depression. Later came soldiers, truck drivers, vacationing families. By 1950, he had opened his own barber shop beside Route 66. His business grew with the traffic. Then, on September 22, 1978, Interstate 40 bypassed Seligman, and the traffic disappeared. Delgadillo later described the moment with devastating clarity. "We knew we were going to get bypassed. We just didn't know how devastating it would be." The town went silent. Businesses closed. Motels emptied. Families left. And like every other bypassed town, Seligman was expected to quietly disappear. But Delgadillo refused. Instead of leaving, he started organizing. In 1987, he formed the historic Route 66 Association of Arizona and began lobbying the state government to officially recognize the old road as historic. He drove to Phoenix repeatedly, sat in waiting rooms, and argued that the road mattered, not just as nostalgia, but as part of American history. Eventually, Arizona agreed. Historic Route 66 signs went up, and something unexpected happened. Tourists came back, not because they needed the road anymore, because they missed what the road represented: a slower America, a stranger America, an America where people still stopped. Seligman slowly rebuilt itself around memory. The old barbershop became a tourist destination. Delgadillo's brother's restaurant, the Snow-Cap Drive-In, still serves burgers and milkshakes to travelers from around the world. Visitors photograph vintage signs, painted cars, motel facades preserved from another era. Even Pixar found its way there. Director John Lasseter visited Seligman while researching Cars. The film's story, a forgotten Route 66 town bypassed by the interstate, came directly from places like Seligman. Millions of children watched that movie. Most never realized the towns were real, and most of those towns never found their Ángel Delgadillo. That is the final truth buried beneath Route 66. The interstate system made America faster, but speed has consequences. Every bypass created winners somewhere else, and silence somewhere here. The towns along Route 66 were not destroyed by disaster. They were sacrificed for efficiency, and almost nobody living there was ever asked whether the trade was worth it. Because once the new map was drawn, the old one was allowed to fade, one exit at a time. Route 66 was officially removed from the United States highway system in 1985. On paper, it stopped existing. But if you leave the interstate and follow the old alignments through the desert, the road is still there. Cracked pavement, faded motel signs, empty diners, gas stations waiting for cars that no longer come. In Amboy, the neon still glows. In Glenrio, the road ends in gravel beside abandoned buildings. In Seligman, tourists from around the world still stop to photograph what remains. The interstate made America faster, but it also decided which places mattered and which places could be bypassed. That is the ghost map hidden beneath Route 66. Not just a road, a system that redrew the country. Have you driven Route 66 or seen a town that felt left behind after the traffic moved elsewhere? Tell us where you're from and what changed. Every empty place has a reason. Every broken town has a story. This is the Ghost Map. Subscribe and follow the map.